Hi, I'm Mark Rossano, founder and CEO of C6 Capital Holdings, coming to you from Prime Vision Network. In today's special update, we're going to look at India and China. Now, we first started talking about the potential clash on our May 29th show, where we really went in depth on 9-line, what is the Pakistan-Chinese economic corridor, what does LADAKH mean to both China and to India, and what has been happening in LADAKH and Bhutan, specifically between these two nations. So it's important to appreciate, where we are and where we sit right now. So this is a good picture, giving a kind of an update as to where are the new positions in terms of what China has been shifting. So if we go back just after our May 29th show, about 2 weeks later, there was a big skirmish between China and India, where there was about 20 Indian soldiers killed. There were countless injuries on both sides. We're still unsure on what the impact on the Chinese side was. Rumors have it at 40 plus. But again, that changed the dynamics. Now this became a bigger friction point with two powers with conflicting interests, really butting heads. And we've seen that really escalate on a broader scale. Russia has increased the movement of S-400s and equipment into India. The U.S. has found a new friend in terms of trying to cordon off and try to really kind of track and really address the Chinese situation. And now we're seeing India and Vietnam entering in deeper conversations regarding not only economic unity, but also a military unity and presence. And these are things to consider when we look at the two most recent issues that have occurred specifically in LADAKH at this point in time. So this you can see in terms of looking at new Chinese encampments. You can see how they've pushed right on the ridge lines. We see new support bases. And typically at this point in time, you have two choices because you're coming very close to the winter at this point in time. You're either going to push forward and make an advance or make a push to either claim ground, claim land, make an attack, or you're going to look to harden your position and really dig in for the winter. And right now, even though we've had two additional clashes, the decision has been made to essentially dig in and to strengthen positions. So here you can see kind of what has happened over time. So what has happened recently? So there's been two skirmishes since. So the Chinese troops were carried out what was considered a provocative military movement on Saturday night, and the India defense minister essentially said this on Monday, saying that this was something that was violating the agreements that were made. So the agreement was that was that you were going to have the Chinese military pulling back from some of these outposts, but instead of doing that, they've continued to act in an aggressive manner. They are running fiber in terms of cables. They're strengthening positions, and this is creating additional strife. Now, the latest skirmish really happened, which was after this in terms of just what was happening, because as the PLA was moving forward, India responded in kind. And the latest skirmish happened on between the two sides in the southern bank of the Pangong Sao Glacier Lake, which is about along the line of actual control. So this is important because both India and China have moved countless, thousands of troops, tanks, artillery guns, fighter jets very close to the border. And you can see here, just looking at this chart, China's built an additional heliport, again, increasing the ability to reach some of these new forward positions. And you can see that there's been two built over that time period. But the numbers of casualties, captures remains unclear. So this was one skirmish. Now, there was another skirmish that happened, which we'll talk about in a minute, but this was one that actually resulted in potential either deaths, captures, POWs. So this is something to watch because they were already trying to de-escalate, and clearly nobody was actually taking this serious, which is what we said was going to happen when we first talked about and provided a follow-up to the LADAKH situation. And now when we keep talking about the situation, as of Wednesday, as of today, we continue to see flight patterns coming out of the Indian Air Force that is really monitoring the situation, not only just in terms of what's happening on the ground, but what's also happening from the Chinese side, and providing intelligence to ground forces to really make these assessments as to, is there going to be a reaction to not only the skirmish that happened, but India moving, and essentially in the dead of night, they moved several thousand troops into elevated positions, which if you look at it from a maps perspective, which we will in a moment, you can see it's a strategic level to really keep tabs on and to track troop movements, which is going to be a problem as we start to, again, kind of moving forward, which is what these flight patterns are doing. And that's why India has readjusted troop deployments around the lake between, as the military talks just didn't really work. And all frontline bases along the LAC have been placed on that high alert, given what's already been happening at this point in time. So on August 31st, kind of coming back to it, while they were in discussions, PLA troops conducted those issues, and you had some firings back and forth, which again is going to remain a problem. But as we go forward and we look at kind of where things have been positioned, you can see that the southern border, the southern bank is very important in terms of just the elevation and just getting that high point. And you can see based on where the pre-existing posts are, where the new posts are, and how that shift has really moved in terms of that forward line. Now, this is going to be a bigger problem. And now the wordage on the left just provides you what the commentary was from China, following the interactions. And obviously both sides are going to blame each other. The question is going to be, what is this? Where does this leave us? And now as friction is increasing, I don't believe it's going to lead to a bigger conflict, at least not before we get that big freeze. Now, shifting into what recently happened. So India triggered the latest clash with China on this border, and it was purely because it was a nighttime operation where India claimed strategic outposts. So this is something where they moved the forward line because China moved into a strategic location, and India had not really reacted in such a way to take some of the high ground in order to track these movements, because they were trying to de-escalate. They were trying to get China to pull back from those positions and move back to the original lines and to maintain some of that distance. When China failed to do so, India then reacted in kind and moved their troops into some of these areas in order to manage and maintain visual, but also kind of meeting that aggression in terms of that tit for tat. And, it's being called India's first offensive move. You can, look at it either way. Was it reactive, proactive? That's always something for the historians to look at when we look backwards. And thousands of troops climbed into the mountain peaks for 6 hours, claiming the vantage points along these banks. And this is a big, important component because the action was taken to counter what India saw as an intrusion of Chinese forces. So again, this is where we sit. And now, given it wasn't an aggressive act towards Chinese troops, again, it was essentially digging in and making sure they have the right position for the spring thaw, or in case something does escalate. Now that provides some color in terms of what's happened in LADAKH. Now it's time to move into what's happening in the Doklam Plateau, what's happening in Ladakh, and here you can see both sides have really kind of hardened their position. So here's looking at what China has done in terms of building additional capacity. So they've built heliports and they've built other anti-aircraft. So anti-aircraft facilities have been built about 50 kilometers from the initial clash points, and additional heliports in order to provide support not only in the Doklam Plateau, but also in Ladakh in terms of where some of those issues are. So here you can see the surface-to-air missile site. That early warning system is right next to the Doklam Plateau, right where a lot of that, again, that 50 kilometers from the previous issues. Now, this is something to watch because this, again, also faces a similar freeze, timing issues. It's just people are moving into position. And given the fact that you could say, well, they clashed in 2017 and nothing happened. If you look at LADAKH, they clashed in the 90s and nothing happened. It's like, well, yes, but the world was a different place. The economies were in a different place. As we spent our OPEC show talking about and our economy show talking about the pressures these countries are under, not only on a local populace level, but also in terms of just GDP growth, this is where you start to see these issues. And especially when you look at this specific area of Doklam Plateau, this goes straight down into Bangladesh and right to the Bay of Bengal, and really cordons off and would allow China to try to take some of this key farmland, which, if we go back to what we've been talking about essentially since March and April in terms of just the sheer problem of food, where COVID's going to cause hundreds of thousands of deaths. But again, the food issue is going to cause millions. And this is what we continue to see as food inflation ramps up and China continues to struggle with closing that food gap following floods, army worms, locusts, just inherent problems, swine flu. These are going to be problems that have to be addressed. And that's why we continue to look at some of these flashpoints. China has also sent what's called 2 aircraft carrier killer missiles into the South China Sea. And again, that was just sending a message to the U.S. saying we do have the capabilities. They are considered what's called an aircraft carrier killer because of the way that they can be loaded and fired into what would be deemed a impenetrable force of an aircraft carrier fleet. Again, these are is it saber rattling? Is it positioning? These are things that we are always going to look at because the rhetoric continues to get worse. And the more military equipment that's in the area, the bigger chance there is for an accident or an escalation. And then the snowball is kicked off the top of that mountain and things just tend to roll out of control from there. So this is just a quick update. We'll continue to follow the situation, provide any kind of issues that may arise. We don't think there's going to be much happening in terms of that friction point before the winter. But again, it's everything is very fluid right now. So thanks again for watching. We're going to follow up on Friday with our primary vision frac spread count. So hopefully you're having a great weekend. You get to enjoy the long weekend. Thanks again for watching. I'm Mark Rossano, founder and CEO of C6 Capital Holdings, coming to you from Primary Vision Network.